Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are, guys, and welcome to the very first episode of our Formula One. I would say podcast, but I don't want us to be called that. Very first sports show,
Yeah,
Formula
sure.
One sports show. Um, what we're going to be doing today is going to introduce both of us to you guys that haven't watched one of our shows before. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to go and have a talk through the Turkish Grand Prix that happened over the weekend. And then we're just going to have a little chit chat at the end about a couple of things that we've spoken about before, but we want to have a little bit of a chat about as well. But before we get into that or get into any of that, don't forget down below in the description below is all of our social media, so go and follow us on there. Don't forget as well that if you have any ideas or anything you want us to talk about as well, put in the comments. We will happily talk about it as well. So get interactive as well as don't forget to go and subscribe if you're new onto YouTube. Go and click the bell at the top. That will notify you as soon as one of our videos go live, and we do 5 days a week now worth of sports shows. So let me just quickly run through it. On a Monday, we are releasing a Reading show where we talk with Courtney, all things about his opinion on Reading, any news that he's got, and what we're building up to as well. Tuesdays, we are releasing a wrestling show where we talk things WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact Wrestling, anything that's going on that's big at the moment. We will cover it and discuss it and talk about it. We just released one yesterday as well, so go and check that out as we build up to the big Survivor Series pay-per-view coming up Sunday for everyone. Today, when you guys watch this or listen to this is Formula One. Tomorrow, on Thursday, for you guys watching this, will be NFL. It's Thanksgiving special this week, but we're releasing it on the day of Thanksgiving. But we're going to be talking about overall things as well. We're not just going to be concentrating on that. And then Friday, we are doing another Reading FC show where we will be building up to the Bournemouth game, the big Bournemouth game coming up Saturday. And we will also might be discussing all things Premier League, building up to that as well. So go and check that out. As long as everyone is here and everyone's ready to go, introduce yourself, young man. How are you?
Hello. Hello, I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. Well, introduce yourself and
Hi,
just a little
well,
bit of explain about yourself.
hi, I'm Josh. Basically, I've been an F1 fan since I can remember from the age of 2 or 3, so about 12, 13, 14 years now. I've always watched F1. My parents have always watched it. I'd say I'm fairly knowledgeable on F1. I'd say I'm quite knowledgeable on it, on the topic, and I watch every Grand Prix, and I have done for the last couple of years. So, yeah, fairly knowledgeable, especially on more modern and the current grid as well.
Hmm. That's good. For me, I've been an F1 fan on and off for I don't
Yeah,
know how long, but I've recently really got into it, um, where I think for the past 3 4 years I've really got into it, watching the majority of the Grand Prix. But for me, I know there's a lot of F1 podcasts or F1
yeah,
sport, but what we want to try and do is we want to be very different. We want to have a bit of a laugh. You're going to get a perspective of an idiot, which is me, and then you're going to get a perspective of someone who's experienced, like Josh.
yeah.
So that's how we're going to do it.
It's
Right.
just more general instead of being a bit more professional with people who are involved in F1 or whatever. It's more just general people who watch it on the telly like everyone else does on a Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon or
And you
Sunday
also,
morning, as it was this week.
yeah, and at the same time, you can swear on here as well. So,
Yeah, exactly.
because I don't give a shit. So let's talk about let's start off with the Turkish Grand Prix. Let's talk about qualifying. Bit of a mad qualifying. What happened? What was your thoughts on the qualifying?
I was very shocked to see, considering that the racing points are meant to be a bit like a B-Tech Mercedes car this season, that they were first and third, and then the normal Mercedes were sixth, Hamilton and
Mhm.
Bottas and ninth, and they really struggled in qualifying. Obviously, you had the two red flags in qualifying one.
So the full grid for the qualifying results were: Stroll was first, Verstappen second, Perez third, Albon fourth, Ricardo fifth, Hamilton sixth, Ocon seventh. Is that Kimi? Kimi was eighth. Bottas was ninth. Giovinazzi was 10th. Norris 11th. Vettel 12th. 13th Sainz. 14th Leclerc. Gasly, Magnussen, Kvyat, Russell, Grosjean, and Latifi. finished off the which was very shocking for me when I looked at it. I didn't see much of the qualifying, but when I looked at it and I turned and I saw the results and I saw Hamilton was sixth and Stroll was first, and
Stroll's on pole,
I went, eh?
Yeah.
But we'll get into the race in a minute. But
Yeah.
let's talk about Stroll. Let's have a quick chat.
I was a bit surprised to see him on pole. And he was on pole by a good couple of attempts as well, so it wasn't like he scabbed it like it's been recently, where it's like a couple of hundredths of a second over. It was a couple of attempts in it, so he did really deserve to be on pole.
So his Q3, he did a 1:47.7. The second place Verstappen did 1:48.
Yeah. So a couple of attempts, 3-4 attempts.
So he did quite far. What is your opinion on Stroll?
Obviously, people don't like him with how his dad owns the team, and basically he's got a job for life there at Racing Point. But at the end of the day, he's a young guy who's doing well for himself at this point. So I mean, on merit, he kind of deserves to be in the seat. He was fourth in the championship up until Mugello.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's been up and around there. He obviously dipped off and he got COVID and then struggled for a couple of races. So yeah, I think he's one of those, like, he's a form driver. He needs to be in good form, and then you'll get good results out of him.
Yeah, I think definitely it showed in the race, which we'll get into in a minute. He's a confidence driver.
Yeah, 100%.
You could tell that when things didn't go well for him, his head went.
His head went, and he slowly fell back and back and back.
So let's start about the race. Let's get into the race. So let's talk about the start. So I put out on Twitter, I said, "What a start by Hamilton," and then I went, "Oh, that was a really good start." And then I saw Vettel, and I went,
"Yeah, Vettel just went."
He went
off, really. Just went
ape shit, didn't he?
It's a bit like Kimi did in Portugal, where he just kind of went from middle of the pack, just went flying up the grids, and it proves that you might not have had a good year, but experience helps in these wet weather conditions.
So I know we're going to talk about Bottas more at the end, but the first corner, he
didn't get touched either. Like, I know Ocon got spun round by Ricciardo because Hamilton went up the inside of Ricciardo, and then Ricciardo touched Ocon, but Bottas just kind of spun on his own on the outside of all of them.
I think I heard someone say, it was the commentary or someone, so he did a sympathy spin where he felt sorry for Stroll and just spun it. It was like, "Oh, I'll help you out." And then he spun out again, Bottas, I think, with a couple of laps going on. And I want to talk about Vettel for a sec. When Vettel got up there in the top, I think it was the top 4, top 3, with Max Verstappen behind, Max could not find a way past him.
No, he couldn't get past. So neither could Lewis later on. It proved that obviously his defensive driving's still up to par, good enough, easily.
And I think we'll talk about Vettel as well. We're going to keep talking about him because he did so well.
He did so well. Driver of the day for a reason.
Yeah, but we talk about Max struggling to overtake, but Albon was the only driver I remember that didn't really have that much trouble overtaking Vettel. He had a little bit of a ding dong, but went straight past.
Yeah, he went fairly quick down into, I think it's turn 11, and where he like swoops down and comes down. He went down the inside of Vettel and just found the grip, and went straight past, which was, I bet Hamilton found frustrating because he got stuck behind him for 7-8 laps.
But it was good to see as well. We were talking about Hamilton versus Vettel. It's good to see that there is still, I think it was only for a time being until he got through. But if Vettel gets the car and he gets an engine that's actually any good, them two can still fight it out for
at the top.
So let's talk about Max Verstappen.
Well, he had a good start, didn't he? Or not a good start. He had a terrible start and then recovered.
He recovered very well, and then he tried to overtake Perez. I think it was Perez, and then it just went absolutely wrong for him.
So from what I remember, he kind of went to go down on the back straight. There's like a little right-hand kink where they go up the hill. I kind of tried to go down the inside of Perez, and there's no space, and then ran out wide, went onto the tarmac on the outside and like the AstroTurf, and then just spun on the AstroTurf, and then just lost it. So
I put here lap 23. On lap 23, first was Stroll, second was Perez, third was Albon.
Yeah,
On lap 23, you could see the Red Bull, and especially Max Verstappen, was really struggling with the inters
yeah.
that they had on. Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I think they just struggled to switch on because they talked about it in qualifying afterwards. Max said to go back to qualifying. Max said, "Oh yeah, we really like the full wet tires, which is what they all started on, and then went on to inters, and he still did all right. But I think they just struggled to get them in that perfect working range where they're like prime temperature and prime performance."
So on lap 30, between first and fifth, there was 10 seconds between them. I think first was Stroll and fifth was Hamilton at that point, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
And then Albon then made an absolute boo-boo,
yeah,
started spinning,
spinning.
and then Hamilton just went, "Thank you very much."
Yeah, typical Albon fashion at the moment, where he's doing well and then just spins on his own accord and loses it.
I got very happy when I saw Hamilton winning, as you can probably tell. If you,
Yeah,
we write notes before we do a
yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
so
That's
we
why we're
know.
both looking down. We've both got our
Yeah.
phones out with notes on.
So what I've put on it on capital letters is Hamilton winning.
Yeah, I saw that and giggled earlier. That's
Uh,
why I checked it.
so I think everyone did a two-stop.
Apart from
Hamilton.
Hamilton and Perez, who finished
I
first
thought
and second.
did Perez get a stop in? Yeah, I got it.
No, Perez stayed out the whole time as well. Hamilton just got
So
passed on pace.
do you think? Because I put this here is how did Hamilton survive? I think it was 45 laps, or might have been
51, I think I saw in the end, or something like that.
51 laps altogether on one set of
One
tires.
set of inters. And
How
then
do you think
Perez
he
did like
did that?
50. I mean, he's proven time and time again he's his best on the tyres. And then I think also where they said at the end, where everyone else came in for a second set of inters, especially when Stroll came in that late, the track was basically dry at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and the inters had worn away so much that when you look at the inter tires, there's like little grooves in them so they can spray it, get rid of the water. But at the end, if you look at Hamilton's tire, it's just flat and it's like a slick, like a normal dry tire.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how he was able to cope with it, because it was basically stay on the dry line with basically a dry tire, you're going to be fine. And I think he kind of knew it was in the bag because he pulled out 30-second gap, whatever it was, and could kind of not coast back, but could be a bit more relaxed in his approach coming back to the line, almost in the last couple of laps. Just like get it over the line, get it done, make sure the tyres don't explode like Silverstone, and we'll be fine.
So I just saw something here. Let's talk about Lance Stroll. Basically, I've just saw here that Racing Point have put out a tweet. I think it was yesterday. And basically they said, update the driver's team routine post-race car setup. We discovered that damage to the underside of Lance Stroll's front wing. That was a significant contributor to gaining issues he experienced during his second and third stints on immediate tyres.
Yeah.
It says here that he started feeling the graining from lap 17 onwards. And when he pitted for fresh inters on lap 36, it failed to resolve the issue as well.
Because he was complaining about the inters graining literally like the lap after he came in. Because I was sat with my mum watching, she went, hasn't he just put those on? I was like, yeah, he has. And he's already complaining about the graining, which is like when you go on the tyres more and more, obviously. So I was a bit confused by it. So I assume that it just made it really hard on the tyres with the damage.
So one of the things that they said as well was data showing during the race confirmed that there was a significant loss of downforce, of front downforce, but no visible damage on the front side of the front wing. Combined with the low grip conditions, it was difficult to confirm whether the data was correct. It was only after the race, when the car returned to the garage, that the damage and the blockage and the underside of the front wing was discovered. But at the same time, it makes sense now. I think after reading that, I think it's going to be interesting to see how is a Racing Point a wet car race? Is it, or well, I think at the same time it doesn't. It helps that Mercedes had an absolute can't work in the rain.
Yeah.
What is your thinking on Racing Point in general? Next season, you've got Stroll and Vettel.
Stroll and Vettel becoming Aston Martin next year.
Is coming Aston Martin next year. What are you thinking of that team? Do you think Vettel's going to have a car because underneath him? Do you think he's going to be? Do you think they'll be able to challenge?
Strong third, like a clear way third place next season, because I think they'll just develop the car from what they had this year into next year. Ferrari won't overly develop because they'll be looking to the new regulations. Same with Renault, which is coming Alpine, I think it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll look towards 2022 when the regulations change. And so on McLaren, where I think Racing Point might go, this is our chance to get third, get the extra money, and then develop when we get to 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of developing now for 2022 and it all going possibly wrong.
And that's basically what Ferrari are doing, I think, now, aren't they?
They basically cease development on the car for this and next year, basically, at this point.
Which will be interesting. I think it'd be cool to see. I wouldn't say cool, but interesting to see. Why did I say cool? I never even said that ever. Be interested to see what happens next season in Ferrari with Ferrari, because they've got Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
But they're both going to have the same sort of car because they're not really developing it that much. Who do you think is going to go out on top between them two? We'll discuss this more at the end of the race season, and we'll go into more detail each week about each team, and we'll go through it all and doing all of that. How do you think next season? Do you think who's going to be the top driver if you had to pick out with them two?
What, Sainz and Leclerc?
Yeah, right now.
I think Leclerc will come out on top, but because I think he'll have a much stronger start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because he's basically had 2 years of that car, or a year and a half of that car at that point. And then Sainz will pick up the pace through testing in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And then I can't remember what, Spain's 5th on the calendar, somewhere around their 5th, 6th race of the season. I think that's when he'll be in his rhythm and in his groove of, I understand the car now. I like how I set it up like this because that's how I like the car.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go racing now. Try catch Leclerc. But I think that start of the season, those first 4 or 5 races, will just be the edge over for Leclerc.
That'd be interesting to see. And then I put he just lapped Bottas. Like Hamilton lapped his own teammate. I couldn't even believe that when I saw that. On lap 47, Stroll was now 8th. Perez was 2nd, Charles Leclerc was 3rd, Vettel 4th, Sainz 5th, Albon 6th.
Is this when Verstappen was coming back through the pack after his spin?
Yeah. Let's talk about Stroll just for a quick second on lap 47. You could tell that his head went.
His head had gone, because you could even tell in the team radio, he's like, even before when they first called him into pit, he's like, no, I don't want to pit, and you could tell he's getting frustrated that he's had this 10, 20 second lead, and then it became about 3 seconds, and then he pit, and it still just the car didn't recover almost. And he ended up finishing behind Lando Norris in the end, who was another one of the drivers who didn't come in for a second set of inters.
It was interesting because with 10 laps to go, Lewis Hamilton was a pit stop ahead of 2nd. And he still didn't even change his tyre. Unbelievable. And then Lewis Hamilton come through. Let's talk about the ending. So Hamilton come through. Perez versus Vettel versus Charles Leclerc.
Because I remember looking at, so Hamilton came over the line, and then the first thing I always do is then I check the time sheets because I knew it was close.
Mm-hmm.
On the little thing, Leclerc and Perez had swapped, so Leclerc was 2nd, and that's when there's like almost 3 of them going down the back straight. And then the Sky cameras cut to Leclerc, who's gone deep into the corner trying to defend. And Perez and Vettel just both come straight past. And me and my mum were sat there like, what's going on?
I think I tweeted out, yes, thank God Vettel is back.
Yeah. I think that's what he needed to get his confidence back, to get back on the podium. That's what he's needed.
He needed a car. He just needed
Yeah.
something. So that ended the race, and Lewis Hamilton has now equaled Michael
Michael
Schumacher.
Schumacher. Yeah.
I want to read you these stats, okay? And I want to get your take on it. So Michael Schumacher did 306 races. Lewis Hamilton did 264. They both have 7 world titles now to their name each.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton has won 94 races. Michael Schumacher has won 91. Lewis Hamilton has won 35% of his races that he's won. Michael Schumacher has won 30% of his races when he's done. Podiums. Lewis Hamilton has got 163 podiums in his career. That's 62% of his races he's got on the podium.
Yeah.
Michael Schumacher's got 155, which classes a 51% podiums in his career. Lewis Hamilton has had 97 poles in his career, and that's 37% of his career that he's been on pole. Michael Schumacher has done 68, and that's 22%. I'm
The
not.
only,
Go on.
the only things that I think almost sway it in Hamilton's favour is the fact that where Schumacher retired and then came back in 2010 till 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and is in that Mercedes that was just before this Mercedes that wasn't great. So that's what, about 60 races where it kind of throws your odds off or your percentages off a bit, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Because without those, if he didn't come back, he probably had, I think he probably got like a 2 or 3 less podiums and 1 less pole position, which he got at Monaco, if I remember, like 2012.
Yeah, his return when it didn't go all to plan did not help. Is Lewis Hamilton the greatest driver of all time?
On term, I'd still say no.
Why?
I'd go Ayrton Senna because of, I think, his natural pace and his natural ability would still be. If you put those two in the same car in the same time, I still think Senna would beat Lewis as it stands.
But you say that, but you've got drivers that have come and gone in Mercedes, like Nico
Yeah.
Rosberg. He was there for a while, Bottas, but no one's ever been able to match Hamilton.
Yeah, I think Rosberg had the potential to, but I think Lewis got the mental edge over him, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lewis was in his head all the time, and then that's why Rosberg retired at the end of the season where he won the championship.
So, I personally, in my opinion, I think Lewis Hamilton is the greatest driver of all time.
Yeah.
I think winning 7 world titles. I love Ayrton Senna.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the great drivers of all time, and I think he will go down in history as probably the great drivers, one of the greatest drivers to ever be in Formula One. I think Michael Schumacher is always going to be the name of the greatest, but when you
I
have
think it's that
someone,
nostalgic era. I think that's what Schumacher has, is that nostalgic era of where most people grew up and then grew into F1. There was Schumacher. So when my generation get a bit older, we'll have Lewis.
yeah. For me, I think Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time. I think someone who's done it has beaten his record in a lot of less races,
Yeah.
the same amount of titles. He was younger than Michael Schumacher as well at the same point when they won 7 titles as well. So Lewis could theoretically get another 2 or 3 before he wants to retire.
I think Lewis might go for 1, maybe 2 more.
I reckon he'll finish on 10.
I don't know if he's got the motivate. I think he'll have to win 3 in a row to get to 10. Because I think if he loses one, that's when he'll call it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It depends on what goes on from now on. You put on here as well. Let's talk about Bottas.
Bottas.
You said, should Bottas be replaced?
I just think in the races where Mercedes have needed that second driver there in a race that isn't really cut and dry, Mercedes are the fastest car. I think Bottas hasn't been up to scratch really. I think of Turkey, he finished 14th behind people like, I think he finished behind one of the Williams, like the Alfa Romeos, the Alfa Tauris. Then I also think of Monza, where he came in, couldn't get through from 13th at all, struggled the whole race. And then Lewis, that's when Lewis then got the penalty, went from the back and still finished ahead of Bottas, where Gasly won. And things like Silverstone and stuff, where you look at that track has been for so long one of Mercedes' better tracks. And then Hamilton, where Verstappen wins, realistically, if Hamilton's not winning, you'd expect their Bottas to win. And he's just not been on the pace to Verstappen. Like, even at races where he probably should have finished behind Verstappen, or he probably should be behind Verstappen in the championship, but Verstappen had a lot more interesting moments this season, shall we say, where he's got a bit unlucky, like in Austria in the first round where his car conked out, or in Imola his tyre blew up, or in Mugello he got spun off on the first lap. We take into all those accounts where Verstappen has accidents that sometimes are his fault, sometimes aren't. I think Verstappen would have been gone clear of where Bottas is.
So who should replace Bottas?
Checo Perez. Sergio Perez should be in the Mercedes seat next season.
And then we'll go on to Perez. Where do you think he'll end up?
I think he'll end up at Red Bull.
What, taking Albon's seat?
Albon's seat, and I think Albon goes back to Alpha Tauri, and Kvyat gets let go into the abyss, which is for me, it's not really an abyss. It's fine.
They'll go away for a few years, do something else, and then come back.
Maybe come back, maybe not.
Yeah. So, do you think Albon has done enough to keep his seat?
The only reason I say no is he had done as good as, maybe a little bit worse than Gasly had done at this point last season, where Gasly lost the seat. And then Albon's basically in a similar situation where he's about a season and a bit into his F1 career. And he's doing as equal to Pierre Gasly, but Pierre Gasly lost the seat. So it should be a similar working of Albon. I think is in the firing line to lose that seat now. Because if you look at it from the stage where he was at lap 23, Stroll, Perez, Albon, looking at that, Albon was the fastest driver on track for a small point. Stroll was dropping off. Albon was catching Perez. Realistically, at that point, you look at it and go, that's Albon's race to lose. And he still, I think, finished. Did he finish behind Max? I can't remember in the end. I'll get the race standards up now, but I think he finished behind Max Verstappen.
Yeah. Max finished sixth. Max finished sixth. Albon finished seventh.
Exactly, and Max spun twice. Did the two-stop, which I know Albon did a two-stop as well. But Max spun twice. Albon was miles clear of Max for a stage, and then he still ended up finishing behind him by, what's that, a second and a half in the end? And Max did a stop more than Albon. Which is 20 seconds. So if you take those 20 seconds out of the extra stop, so let's say he doesn't spin, theoretically Max would have finished second about 6 or 7 seconds clear of Perez if he had just been able to get past him normally.
So the fastest lap was done by Lando Norris in a 1:36.8. The fastest pit stop of the race was done by Red Bull, unsurprisingly, with a 2.03 seconds. That's just ridiculous. And driver of the day, I think we could all agree on easily, was Sebastian Vettel. So let's talk about this season so far. Lewis Hamilton has won. He's done very, very well. What can you? We've got how many races we've got coming up so far? We've got
3 left.
Italy,
Portugal. We've got normal Bahrain left.
2 Bahrain and Abu Dhabi to finish off. What can you see happening for the next 3 races? We'll build up to the Bahrain next week when we do one of these. But let's have a little bit of overview, see if we can predict. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
Next week's that normal Bahrain, isn't it? Where the one after that's like the oval thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think next week it will just be fairly bland Mercedes 1-2 or 1-3 with Verstappen being the other one, because you can't really predict engine failures or anything. So, but providing everything goes to normal, I'm assuming it'll be Mercedes the first two, then a Red Bull, and then the rest could be anything really.
I tell you what, I'm looking at the circuit, and my God, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of straights in the second Bahrain.
It's like an oval, isn't it?
Yeah, that is going to be interesting.
I think they've predicted it to be like a minute lap.
Yeah, because there's 87 laps. There's going to be in that race, so
it's about a minute a lap. I think, or maybe a minute one, a minute two.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes and what that does. But that's it. That went quite well, quite quick. So next week we're going to be building up to Bahrain, where we think what we're going to do is next week is we're going to do a little game. I do this on every show that I do, where we're going to predict and try and guess where we think people are going to finish. And the winner gets bragging rights up until the next race. And if I win, then I'm going to be unbearable.
Yeah, I can tell.
I will be unbearable. I'm going to be...
Watch it. My prediction will be spot on, and then second and third will crash and it'll all go wrong, and somehow you'll get it right.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm planning on for. But what we're going to do is we're going to do that. The next week's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a bit of fun building up to it. Go and follow us on Twitter as well, where I will be bragging a heck of a lot if I win. Every single day, I'm going to bombard them at least 3-4 times a day.
My Twitter mentions are just going to be me at it in that every time.
Every 3 seconds. But yeah, so go follow us on there. Go follow us on Instagram as well. We like to have a little chat with people on Instagram stories. So send us your questions and we will happily answer them through that as well. Don't forget as well, we're on Facebook. We have a little Facebook group where we just post what we normally do on other channels, but we like to interact a little bit more as well with everybody that's around as well. So please go and follow us, go and like us, go and do whatever you guys would like to do to keep up to date with what we're doing. We know that there's not going to be a lot of people that are going to be watching this or listening to this to start off with. We get that because there's a lot of other ones out there and we're in a real big competition with going on. But we enjoy what we do and we love the conversations that we have, and we want you guys to interact with us at the same time. So there's only 3 of you watching or listening, then that doesn't bother us. The 3 of you people that are watching, then put in the comments down below and just tell us any questions you like us to ask. DM us as well.
Any topics as well.
Anything about Formula 1, anything. It is off limits. I shouldn't say that.
There's going to be some rascal comments going to come in now. Some dodgy predictions or something as well.
Yeah. Anyway, don't forget that the wrestling podcast was out for you guys, or the wrestling show was out for you yesterday. We did a Reading quiz, which was quite fun to do on Monday. We got the NFL show, which I'm filming when you listen to this on the Wednesday, but it'll be coming out for you on the Thursday. And then on Friday, we will be building up to the action that goes over the weekend as well. So we look forward to see you guys there, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.